What's up, guys? Your boy Benny. Sometimes people surprise you. I was never anti-JD Vance. I was just pro-Vivek Ramaswamy for vice president. I was very public about that. I was for Vivek. I like Vivek. But JD Vance is somebody who we've gotten to know during interviews on this program. Somebody that we've gotten to know through some of our other friends who are very close with him, like Don Jr., Tucker Carlson, and Charlie Kirk, and some people who really vouchsafe how great JD is and what a solid pick he is for Trump, how he sort of holds the side up. And then we noticed that JD Vance, guy's got some balls, man. Look at this. This is a clip that really put JD on the map in the presidential race itself. JD sort of had a soft launch, right, at the RNC convention. And then he goes to Kamala Harris's plane and he trolls Kamala Harris in front of her own plane, in front of her own press corps. Says, why the hell isn't Kamala Harris talking to you guys? I'll come talk to you. I'm the vice president candidate too. This will be my plane soon. It was the balls of this guy. Yeah, right? So you have hillbilly energy right there. JD Vance rolling in. JD Vance has then gone on to do a sequence of pretty unbelievable walk into the lion's den, which is what he's doing here, right? Walk into the lion's den, which is what he did during the VP debate, which everyone from the New York Times to CNN to the Washington Post to CBS News who hosted the VP debate says JD Vance won. Tim Walz did not win. JD Vance won. And Trump Vance is winning. JD Vance did a great VP debate. Unlike Kamala Harris, JD Vance is walking into the lion's den, walking into combative interviews, people that hate him, people that don't like him, people that don't want him to be elected. JD Vance is walking in there and making these people look like jackasses. It's incredible. JD Vance shocks New York Times reporter with nuanced takedown of illegal immigration. People will do those jobs. Amazing. JD Vance, man of the people. So Republican JD Vance calmly fended off questions from a reporter who suggested a crackdown on illegal immigration could exacerbate the housing crisis. Vance, who's 40, has long contended that illegal immigrant reduces the housing supply and therefore sends prices soaring, brushed aside any notion that illegal immigrants are paramount to the building of more houses. A third of the construction workforce in this country is Hispanic. Of those, a large portion are undocumented. How do you propose to build the housing necessary, says New York Times reporter Lulu Navarro. Oh, man. JD Vance with the heat here, man. Here we go. An interview with JD Vance. Of course, they choose this photo, a non-flattering photo. The full interview here, ladies and gentlemen, and 1 hour long podcast. Doesn't that look? It looks exactly like a New York Times reporter. What is it? If you go to an AI and type in New York Times reporter, this is what you get. And what they got was their ass kicked by JD Vance here on these immigration questions. Check this out.
About a third of the construction workforce in this country is Hispanic. Of those, a large proportion are undocumented. So how do you propose to build all the housing necessary that we need in this country by removing all the people who are working in construction?
Well, I think it's a fair question because we know that back in the 1960s when we had very low levels of illegal immigration, Americans didn't buy houses, didn't build houses. But of course they did. And I'm being sarcastic, of course, in service of a point, Lulu, the assumption that because a large number of home builders now are using undocumented labor, that's the only way to build homes. I think, again,
the country is much bigger.
A fundamental...
The need is much bigger. I mean, I'm not arguing in favor of illegal immigration. I'm asking how you would deal with the knock-on effect of your proposal to remove millions of people who work in a critical part of the economy.
Well, I think that what you would do is you would take, let's say, for example, the 7 million prime age men who have dropped out of the labor force, and you have a smaller number of women, but still millions of women prime age who have dropped out of the labor force. You absolutely could re-engage folks into the American labor market. This is, I think,
to work in construction?
Of course you could.
I mean, the unemployment rate is 4.1%. Most people who
unemployment rate, Lulu, this is important.
But most people who don't work can't work in the regular economy. They're in the military, they're parents, they're sick, they're old. They might not want to work in construction.
The unemployment rate does not count labor force participation dropouts. And again, this is one of the really deranged things that I think illegal immigration does to our society is it gets us in a mindset of saying we can only build houses with illegal immigrants when we have 7 million, just men, not even women, just men who have completely dropped out of the labor force. People say, well, Americans won't do those jobs. Americans won't do those jobs for below the table wages. They won't do those jobs for non-living wages, but people will do those jobs. They will just do those jobs at certain wages. And think about this from the
I,
perspective of an American company, okay? I want them to go searching in their own country for their own citizens. Sometimes people who may be struggling with addiction or trauma, get them re-engaged in American society. We cannot have an entire American business community that is giving up on American workers and then importing millions of illegal laborers. That is what we have thanks to Kamala Harris's border policies. I think it's one of the biggest drivers of inequality. It's one of the biggest reasons why we have millions of people who have dropped out of the labor force. Why try to re-engage an American citizen in a good job if you can just import somebody from Central America who's going to work under the table for poverty wages? It is a disgrace, and it has led to the evisceration of the American middle class.
so
I don't think you even have to deport every single one of them, because a lot of them will actually leave the country willingly if you make it harder for them to work, right? So I think that you have to combine, and again, President Trump and I really think this is necessary. You have to deport a large number of people. There are way too many illegal aliens in this country. You have to reestablish some deterrence and law enforcement for people coming here illegally. I think it's certainly reasonable to deport around 1 million people per year in the United States of America. Now, of course, we have 25 million. So that would take a long time, 25 years, if my math is correct. But again, I don't think that you have to deport everybody, because if you reestablish some semblance of a reasonable border policy, a lot of those people are going to go home willingly. If you make it harder for American companies to undercut the wages of American workers by hiring illegal labor, a lot of those folks are going to go home. I've introduced legislation to tax remittances, because a lot of what goes on is that people come into the country, they make money, they send a lot of it home to whatever country they came from. If you tax the remittances, then people aren't going to come here to sort of try to work under the table to begin with. So again, I think the focus here is like somewhat off, because people talk about the logistical difficulty of making this happen. Well, again, we have had large-scale deportation efforts in the United States. I mean, look, Barack Obama, to his great credit, deported a hell of a lot more people than Kamala Harris has. So you can deport people in this country who are here legally. You just have to have the political willpower to do it. But if you don't do this, Lulu, I mean, what are you're basically saying the United States doesn't have meaningful border policy. I mean, Mexican drug cartels have become the wealth.
This is what it looks like to be a master of your own domain. To understand your own arguments and to understand the arguments of those who are trying to argue with you inside and out. So you're able to reverse the narratives on them. You're deconstructing a false premise, right? Is what he's doing here. If you came into this country illegally, pack your bags, says JD Vance. Holy smokes. Cooking on this one, too. 4 million views, 17,000 reposts. Tim Walz doesn't get that kind of engagement. Just amazing. New York Times reporter in silence as JD Vance educates her. I've never seen a journalist more out of her league and thoroughly embarrassed in this sit-down interview with the hack in the New York Times interviewing JD Vance. Everyone is so proud of JD Vance. He did completely silence her. And also very interesting, this JD Vance interview, and something that is a bit of a thorn in my paw, is how anti-child this country is. JD Vance, who's a father of two, calls that out. Says the United States anti-child narrative is pathological, explains how U.S. culture is encouraging people to not have kids. This is the best 3 minutes of declining birth rates, specifically in America, you will see all month. This is amazing. It followed up by Ashley St. Clair, who's a mother, right? American culture and society is uniquely hostile towards children in public life. Why is that? Why? Why are we suiciding our culture by not having children? And today, Bill Clinton's out. Bill Clinton's out saying, no, we need to replace. We need the birth rate. We need a replacement birth rate. No, you need to incentivize native-born America. You don't need to bring the third world here through smuggling, through human smuggling. You need to incentivize child birth here in this country by native-born Americans. You need to incentivize parenthood here in this country. You need to make it honorable to be parents, mothers and fathers. That's what needs to be done. JD Vance. Oh, man, such a good answer. Here we go.
You said it
And
over in several different venues.
in a very, very short period of time. It was sort of a thing that I picked up on. I said it a couple of times in a couple of interviews. And look, yeah, I mean, I certainly wish that I had said it differently. I mean, what I was trying to get at is that, look, I'm not talking about people who it just didn't work out, right? For medical reasons, for social reasons, like set that to the side. We're not talking about folks like that. What I was definitely trying to illustrate, in ultimately a very inarticulate way, is that I do think that our country has become almost pathologically anti-child. I put this in a couple of different ways, right? So there's one. It was actually when I was in law school. It was on a train between New York and New Haven. I think I was doing like law firm interviews or something, and obviously I didn't have kids then. And there's this young girl gets on the train. She's probably 21 or 22. She's young black female, clear, like, tell by the way she was dressed. She didn't have a whole lot of money. She had a couple of kids with her, and eh, you know I remember like just watching her and thinking like this is a really unbelievably patient mother. I mean, for being literally younger than I was, the reason I sort of noticed her is because her kids, like a lot of kids that age, are complete disasters, especially on public transportation. They turn it up to 11, but she was being so patient. But then like everybody around her was also noticing the kids being misbehaved, and they were so angry, and they were and sighing and staring every time her 2-year-old made a noise. And that was sort of a moment that kind of stuck with me. And then, of course, I've had similar experiences riding with my own kids on various modes of public transportation. And again, it just sort of hit me like, okay, this is really, really bad. This thing that we do where we make motherhood or fatherhood, or there's this, again, I do think that there's like this pathological frustration with children that just is a new thing in American society. I think it's very dark. I think you see it sometimes in the political conversation, people saying, well, maybe we shouldn't have kids because of climate change. When I've used this word sociopathic, like that, I think is a very deranged idea. The idea that you shouldn't have a family because of concerns over climate change doesn't mean you can't worry about climate change, but in the focus on childless cat ladies, we
So are you
missed, I
saying
think,
that
the substance that we
women who
missed. We
don't want to
missed the
have
substance
children?
of what I said.
Sorry, I just want to clarify something. So women who
Please.
don't have children because they're worried about climate change, that's sociopathic?
I think that is a bizarre way of thinking about the future. Not to have kids because of concerns over climate change. I think the more bizarre thing is our leadership, who encourages young women and frankly young men to think about it that way. I mean, bringing life into the world has totally transformed the way that I think about myself, the way that I think about my wife, the way that you watch your grandparents interact with grandchildren. It is like a transformatively positive and good thing for there to be children in the world. And if your political philosophy is saying, don't do that because of concerns over climate change, yeah, I think that's a really, really crazy way to think about the world.